Minato steps forward, and a proud noble family head, a guy who just burned through his most devastating spells trying to kill him, gets knocked out cold by a single flick to the forehead. Not a punch, a flick. Meanwhile, somewhere over a mountain range, a commercial airplane is falling out of the sky, and the guy who's supposed to save it just jumped out of a broken cockpit window into open air, with nothing but his own 2 hands between 230 tons of metal and a very bad ending. Rewind further. A girl with pink hair is crying on a rooftop, confessing to a boy who saved her life twice, and he's about to break her heart as gently as he possibly can. Rewind again. A crime boss thinks he's cornered a rogue vigilante's friends in their sleep, and instead gets torn apart by magic clones that spring out of bangles nobody thought twice about. And somewhere in between all of that, a kid who scored a laughable 100 points on a school assessment cracks the measuring crystal in half and shoots a beam of light straight through the school roof. That kid is the strongest being who has ever existed. And almost nobody in this story knows it yet. Here's how it starts. 1,500 years ago, give or take, nobody's counting anymore, there was a war that ended the world. Not ended like everybody died, ended like everything after it had to be rebuilt from ash. And in the middle of that war, there's one man throwing spells so far past what anyone else could touch that historians, if there were any left to write it down, wouldn't even have language for it. He's not a mage, he's the reason mages exist. Every spell, every rank, every rule of magic anyone will ever learn traces back to him, because he's the one who invented it. He's mid-battle, casting something on the level of a 15th rank spell, a number that means literally nothing to you yet. But trust the math, it's off the charts, past the charts, in a different building than the charts. And it kills him, not because someone beat him, because output that big comes with a cost that big, and even the creator of magic has limits when he's spending everything he's got in one shot. He dies at the absolute peak of power anyone will ever reach. And then he wakes up. 50 years later, different body, different name, same soul, same memories, same monstrous well of power just sitting there behind his ribs. Except now it's wearing the face of a Japanese high schooler named Kusanagi Minato, who, as it turns out, just got hit by a truck. Yeah, that old chestnut. Except this isn't some fantasy world. This is Earth, Tokyo, 2022. 50 years after a global catastrophe wrecked half the planet and forced humanity to relearn magic from scratch. And here's the punchline. Modern mages are pathetic. Not weaker than the old man, pathetic. Actually, factually, embarrassingly weak. The strongest noble families on the planet can barely scratch what used to be considered basic technique. A top-tier noble mage today might swing 500,000 mana points and cast up to a level 7 spell. Sounds impressive until you remember the guy who just woke up used to casually toss around level 15. So when Minato, let's just call him Minato, easier for everyone, checks his own stats after settling into his new body, he finds a registered power level of 100. 100. Out of a scale where regular students sit at a few thousand. Now, before you feel too bad for him, that number's a lie. His own lie. The instant he woke up in this world, he made a call. Hide. Suppress. Don't announce to a fragile, rebuilding society that its strongest weapon just fell out of the sky wearing a school uniform. So he caps his own output, buries the ocean underneath a puddle, and walks into Kamui Magic Academy as the weakest kid in his year. And here's the twist that makes this whole thing work. Kusanagi Minato, the original owner of this body, wasn't just some random unlucky teenager. He was bullied. Badly. Extorted for money, humiliated, pushed around by kids who thought a low mana score made him worthless, right up until the accident that put him in the ground and opened the door for our guy to move in. So the weak, pathetic transfer student everyone's about to underestimate? He's carrying 2 grudges now. One from 50 years and 1 death ago, about a world he failed to fully protect. And one brand new, personal, walking through these hallways right now grudge, about a body and a life that got treated like garbage before he even arrived. Guess which combination makes for a spectacular scene when the bullying starts up again. It doesn't take long. Enter Tadano, a name you're going to want to remember purely so you can enjoy watching him lose. Tadano's the school's resident big-shot bully, riding high on a decent mana score and a nasty habit of using fire magic to intimidate anyone smaller than his ego. He's heard the rumors about the new transfer kid, Kusanagi, the loser who apparently can't even crack triple digits. and decides that's an easy target for a little extortion. Money first. Fists or fire if money doesn't come fast enough. So one day, right there in the classroom, in front of everyone, Tadano throws a fire spell at Minato's face. And nothing happens. I mean, something happens. Minato just doesn't burn. He blocks it without lifting a finger's worth of visible effort, and then, almost as an afterthought, lets a sliver, of his real aura leak into the room. Every single student freezes, not scared of fire, frozen like something ancient just looked at them. Tadano's fire spell fizzles out like it forgot how to be fire. The whole classroom goes dead silent, and Minato just sits back down. Doesn't explain, doesn't gloat, just goes back to minding his own business, leaving an entire room full of teenagers quietly recalibrating their understanding of reality. That's chapter 1 of Don't Mess with the New Kid, and it will not be the last chapter, because school, it turns out, is the least dangerous part of this world. 50 years after the catastrophe, monsters are just a fact of life. They spawn out of nowhere, cracks in reality, dead zones, wherever the world's still scarred, and the ruined parts of major cities, places like Shibuya, are basically monster territory after dark. There's a whole ranking system for these things, and once you know it, every fight in this story hits 10 times harder. Bottom of the barrel, magic beasts. 1 crystal, stuck right on the forehead. Annoying, dangerous to a normal person. Background noise to anyone with real training. Step up, magic guardians. Sometimes called demon guards. Crystal on the chest, sometimes extra crystals on the shoulders for good measure. You need at least a level 3 spell just to put a dent in one of these. Keep climbing. Demons, chief demons, demon captains. Multiple crystals, chest and shoulders both. And, this is the scary part, actual intelligence. These things think. They strategize. Near the top, supreme demons. 5 crystals. The kind of threat that gets a city locked down. And right at the summit, the thing every hunter prays they never have to actually meet. A demon god. 6 crystals. Total annihilation on legs. Keep that ladder in your head, because Minato is about to start walking up it like it's a staircase in his own house. His first night out, he doesn't wait for a mission briefing, he just goes. Straight into ruined Shibuya, alone, off the books, and finds a police officer about to get overrun by a pack of beasts that would normally require a full response team. Minato clears the entire pack himself, fast enough that the officer barely processes what he's watching, and walks away without introducing himself. That's it. That's the moment he quietly decides, this city's a mess, and somebody's got to actually clean it, not just manage it for the cameras. He's not doing this for credit. He's doing it because he watched people die once, 50 years and 1 lifetime ago, and he is not doing that again. Back at school, the official assessments are still trying to catch up to what he already knows about himself. There's a scene, and this one's a personal favorite, where the academy runs a standard mana measurement test. Everyone expects Minato to register somewhere around his usual joke of a number. Instead, when the crystal starts reading his output, it doesn't crack under pressure so much as it detonates. A literal pillar of light punches straight up through the school roof. Teachers panic. Alarms go off. And Minato just stands there, expression completely unbothered, like he just found out his coffee was a little too hot. Nobody in that room has words for what they just watched. A few of them are going to spend the rest of the arc trying to find some. One of those few is Mizuha. Mizuha's the younger daughter of a big, prestigious noble mage family. The kind of family name that opens doors. Except she's the disappointment of the bloodline. No natural talent, weak output, constantly compared to her older sister Ruka, who's basically noble mage royalty by comparison. Mizuha's spent her whole life hearing some version of not good enough, and it's carved a very specific kind of pain into her, the kind that doesn't scream, it just quietly convinces you to stop trying. But Mizuha's got one thing her sister doesn't. She actually pays attention. She's sharp. She notices the little things other people brush off, the way Minato moves, the way danger seems to just evaporate around him, the math that doesn't add up between this guy scored 100 and this guy just walked through a life-threatening situation like it was a stroll. She starts putting pieces together long before anyone else does. And then comes the field exam. Kamui Academy runs a practical exam out in ruined Shibuya. Supervised, controlled, supposedly safe. Supposedly. Because right in the middle of it, a high-ranking demon guard shows up. Not a beast. not fodder, an actual credible threat, crystal armor and all. Tadano, our resident bully, remember him, tries to be the hero here, throws everything he's got at the thing, doesn't even scratch it. The demon guard barely registers him as a threat, which, if we're being honest, is the most humbling moment of Tadano's life up to that point. And then Minato steps in, doesn't power up, doesn't monologue, just fires off what is, by his standards, an absolute joke of a spell. A first-rank fire arrow, the magical equivalent of flicking a bug, and the demon guard drops. Instantly. One shot. Mizuha watches the entire thing happen in real time, and something clicks into place. This isn't a rumor anymore. This isn't a weird vibe from the new kid. She just watched a first-rank spell, the lowest tier that exists, one-shot a monster that should have needed a coordinated team effort. She corners him afterward and does something that takes real guts for someone who's spent her whole life being told she's not enough. She asks him to train her, not politely, she begs. And Minato, who's spent this entire new life quietly protecting people from a distance, says yes. What follows is brutal. Not cruel brutal, just honest brutal. The kind of training regimen you'd expect from someone who used to teach magic to actual gods. Dialed down just enough not to kill a modern teenager, but not dialed down much. They train out at her family's private villa, and it's fast. Weeks, not months. Because when the guy running your drills invented the concept of control, you improve or you break, and Mizuha does not break. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Tadano and his little crew decide they've had enough of the new kid embarrassing them and try to ambush Minato outside of school. Bad decision. Genuinely one of the worst decisions in this entire story. Minato doesn't even fight back in the traditional sense. He just reaches out with wood-based vines and straight up drains their mana on the spot, leaving the whole gang empty, humiliated, and, very shortly after, expelled. No more magic, no more reputation, no more leverage. Tadano's arc, as far as being a threat goes, is basically over, and it goes out not with a bang but with the sound of a bully realizing he never had a chance to begin with. Then the school gets hit with a full-blown calamity. This is the event that changes everything about how people see Minato, a massive monster surge that tears through the academy itself. Hallways full of students suddenly full of danger instead. Most kids are scrambling, teachers are trying and failing to hold the line, and Minato just takes over, organizes an evacuation on the fly, cuts through dozens of monsters clearing hallway after hallway, and in the middle of the chaos personally saves a pink-haired girl who's about to become important later. Remember her? She's the rooftop confession from the top of this video. But the moment that really breaks the dam is Ruka. Ruka, Mizuha's older sister, the talented one, the golden child who's spent years being effortlessly better at everything, gets caught in the open when a demon boss tears into the fight. And in the split second it matters, she throws her own body between the attack and her little sister. Takes the hit meant for Mizuha. Goes down bloodied, unconscious, and for one horrible stretch it looks like the golden child of the family just paid the ultimate price protecting the sister she always overshadowed. That's when Minato steps in for real. No more holding back to keep a low profile, not with Ruka's life on the line. He throws up wide area barriers to lock the fight down, keep it contained, keep more students from getting caught in the blast radius. Then he layers together a synthesized fourth-rank spell, something modern magic theory says shouldn't even be possible, blending multiple elemental attributes into a single strike, something he calls Serpent Storm. And he obliterates the demon boss. Not damages, obliterates. Ruka survives. Barely, but she survives. And two sisters who spent their entire lives defined by a talent gap between them are about to end up on the exact same team, both training under the exact same teacher, both quietly falling for the exact same guy, but we'll get there. Because after the calamity, the government finally does what should have been obvious weeks ago. They hand Minato an official command. A brand new elite unit gets formed on the spot, the Special Magic Team, SMT for short, and Minato's named captain. His first recruits, Mizuha, Ruka, and a mage named Ryuji. What started as one guy quietly cleaning up Shibuya at night off the books just became a fully sanctioned, government-backed monster hunting squad, with the strongest being in existence at the head of the table. And that's just the beginning of what this power is about to unlock. Being captain of a government squad is great for daylight hours, but daylight's not where the real work happens. See, the SMT operates under supervision, paperwork, chain of command, all the stuff that slows a response down when a monster's already 3 blocks into a residential district. So Minato keeps a second job. A night job. No badge, no oversight, no rules. Word starts spreading through the underworld about a figure in black wiping out illegal operations, dismantling monster trafficking rings, and generally making life miserable for anyone running crime out of the ruined districts. They start calling him the Black Mage. Some circles whisper a heavier nickname, Shadowbringer, like the guy's less a person and more a warning. Nobody connects the dots to the quiet transfer student with the fake 100 score, yet. This is where Leona comes in, and her introduction is one of the heavier gut punches in this whole story. Leona's an underground detective, sharp, resourceful, working cases the official police won't touch. She's not doing this for money or thrills. She's doing it because her 9-year-old little brother is lying in a hospital bed in a coma, put there by an attack from the very syndicate she's now hunting, the Black Rebellion. There's a scene at his bedside that's genuinely rough. Leona breaking down, apologizing to a kid who can't hear her, telling him she wasn't strong enough to stop this from happening, and then swearing, through the tears, that she's going to tear the organization that did this apart, piece by piece. That's not a throwaway emotional beat. That's the engine driving her half of this story. Minato, operating as the Black Mage, crosses paths with her investigation and realizes pretty quickly they want the same thing. So they team up. Him with power that shouldn't exist in this era, her with information networks and street-level intelligence that no amount of raw magic can replace. Together they start systematically taking the Black Rebellion apart, cell by cell, safe house by safe house. And every hit is a little bit of payback for a kid who never got a fair shot. But while the Black Mage is quietly gutting organized crime in the shadows, the SMT is getting a very different kind of trouble in broad daylight. The kind that wears a suit and smiles for cameras. Enter the Fuka family. Fuka-jin and his son Shu are noble mages, old money, the type of people who've spent generations mistaking wealth for worth. And they've built a nice little racket for themselves. They stage disasters, or at least stage the resolution of disasters that were never that dangerous to begin with. Collaborate quietly with illegal mages to manufacture threats, and then swoop in to save the day for the cameras, collecting glory and government funding for problems they half created themselves. The rise of the SMT is a direct threat to that scam, a squad that actually clears real threats, no theater required, makes the Fuka family's whole business model look exactly like what it is. So they start a smear campaign, feeding the press stories designed to paint Minato's team as reckless amateurs, quietly stealing credit for smaller monster cleanups the SMT already handled, doing everything they can to strangle the new squad's reputation in its crib before it becomes untouchable. It doesn't work, because Mizuha's father, Mizuha Toshiru, a genuinely powerful noble mage in his own right, has been running his own quiet investigation into the Fuka family's corruption from the inside. Between his intel and what Minato and Leona have already dug up chasing the Black Rebellion's money trail, they assemble enough proof to bury the Fukas completely. And they don't do it quietly, they do it live, on national television. The SMT exposes the Fuka family's illegal dealings in front of the entire country, the staged disasters, the underworld collaboration, all of it, laid out in real time with no room for spin. Shu Fuka, the son, absolutely crumbles under the pressure, and it's honestly one of the more satisfying face slaps in the whole story. A kid who spent his whole life looking down on commoners ends up on his knees, begging, before getting physically pinned down by the very people he used to mock. But Fuka-jin, the father, the one with the real power and an ego to match, isn't going down without a fight. He challenges Minato directly, publicly. Cameras rolling, reputation on the line, the whole nation watching. And this is where the numbers become the joke. Fuka-jin flexes a mana pool of roughly 500,000, near the absolute ceiling for what a modern noble mage can reach. He winds up a level 7 atmospheric spell, something that could level a city block, the kind of magic that's supposed to be functionally unstoppable by anyone in this era. Minato pulls out a crystal, a cheap, low-tier earth attribute crystal, the kind of thing you'd find in a beginner's spell kit, and casually points out the most basic rule in the magic rulebook. Wind loses to earth. Elemental counter, plain and simple. Fuka-jin's devastating level 7 spell just stops. Erased. Not overpowered. Countered. The same way you'd counter rock with paper, except the paper here is a 500,000-year-old god who's had this matchup memorized since before Fuka Jin's bloodline existed. Jin, humiliated and desperate, throws everything else he's got. Doesn't matter. And when he finally runs dry, Minato doesn't finish him with a spell at all. He walks up, and with a single physical flick to the forehead, drops the head of one of the most powerful noble families in the country like a sack of bricks. Cameras catch every second of it. That's not a battle. That's a public execution of an entire family's reputation, and it happens in under a minute. After that, the SMT isn't just respected, they're a phenomenon. Media attention goes from interesting new squad to borderline suffocating. Reporters camped outside, fans showing up at their base, the whole 9 yards. So the higher-ups do the only sensible thing. They force the team to take a mandatory vacation. Somewhere far away from cameras. Hawaii. And this is where the story takes a breather. Because even the strongest being in existence apparently doesn't know how sunscreen or smartphones work. Minato spent his previous life fighting apocalyptic wars, not scrolling social media. So watching him try to navigate modern teenage culture is its own kind of chaos. But the real chaos on this beach trip comes from something else entirely. Minato, completely without any malicious intent, just being straightforwardly, devastatingly honest with compliments. He tells Mizuha, Ruka, and another teammate named Sanada exactly what he thinks of how they look in their swimsuits. Direct, detailed, zero filter, and reduces all 3 of them to flustered, stammering messes on the spot. The guy can casually one-shot demons, but apparently has no idea what reading the room means when it comes to teenage girls' feelings. It's a genuinely funny stretch of the story, and it also quietly cements something that's been building for a while. These girls are not just impressed by him anymore. They're falling for him. But vacations don't last, and the next stop on this ride takes things in a very different direction. Minato heads to Osaka to help stand up a new regional response team, and while he's there, he runs into someone from his actual past life, a woman named Takigami Shizuku. And unlike literally everyone else in this story, Takigami doesn't need convincing. She looks at this teenage transfer student and immediately recognizes him for who he really is. Ichigami Minato, the original creator of magic itself. Old ally, old history, no explanation required. It's a small scene, but it's a heavy one, because for the first time in this new life, somebody actually knows him. Not the fake weak transfer student cover story, the real him. Of course, Osaka isn't just a reunion trip. A pair of magic nobles named Hinata and Riku decide to test the newcomer by ambushing him with a hostage trap, using people close to him as leverage. Bad move, and here's where a little piece of setup from earlier finally pays off. Remember those bangles Minato handed out to his teammates before he left for Osaka, telling them not to take them off? Turns out those weren't just accessories. When Hinata and Riku try to spring their trap and threaten his friends on a live feed, the bangles automatically activate, spawning magical clones on the spot that tear the would-be executioners apart before they can lay a finger on anyone. Minato's not even in the room, and the trap still gets demolished, because he planned 3 moves ahead before he ever left. And just when Hinata and Riku think the worst is over, it isn't. A chief demon shows up in the middle of the chaos. Multiple crystals, real intelligence, real danger. And it doesn't just fight the 2 nobles, it stomps them without breaking a sweat. These are supposedly powerful mages, and the chief demon treats them like a warm-up. Then Minato steps in, and this is a genuine escalation in what we've seen him do so far. No more first-rank jokes. No more casual earth crystals. He drops a level 9 void spell, something called Magic Sparkle, and the chief demon, one of the more dangerous monster classifications in this entire hierarchy, just ceases to be a problem. Level 9. Out of 10. We are getting very, very close to seeing what this man actually looks like when he stops holding back. Here's where things get complicated, because being a hero by night and a squad captain by day was always going to catch up with him eventually. Inspector Shido has been running the police side of monster response since before the SMT even existed, and he's not a guy who does things halfway. His whole career, his whole personality, traces back to one moment, watching his own father get killed by an illegal mage during a hostage negotiation his father was trying to handle peacefully, unarmed, doing everything right. Shido's spent his life since then hating criminals with a focus that borders on obsession, which makes him excellent at his job, and occasionally a problem for anyone operating outside official channels, even someone technically on the same side. And Shido's noticed something. The timing of the Black Mage's appearances lines up a little too neatly with Minato's schedule. The skill level lines up a little too neatly with what the SMT captain can apparently do. So Shido does what Shido does. He goes public. Accuses Minato, on record, of secretly being the rogue vigilante everyone's been buzzing about. This is a problem, not because Minato's ashamed of the Black Mage, he's not. The guy's been cleaning up crime the system couldn't touch, but because a public confirmation blows the whole careful balancing act. Government-sanctioned captain by day, unsanctioned vigilante by night, doesn't hold together once it's official knowledge. So Minato needs to make this accusation disappear, cleanly, without actually lying about who he is to the people who matter. His solution is honestly one of the cleverest moves in the whole story. He uses that same automated duplicate magic behind the bangle trick, except this time on purpose, in public, for spectacle. He stages a full daytime duel in Shibuya, live, cameras everywhere, against a separate illusory combatant he calls Chrono. To everyone watching, it looks exactly like Minato squaring off against the Black Mage himself, in broad daylight, at the same time, in the same place. Which is, on its face, impossible if they're the same person. The duel plays out convincingly. The two of them clash across the ruined district, and by the end of it, the accusation looks laughably wrong on live television. Shido's case evaporates in front of the whole country. It's a magic trick in the truest sense, not deception through lies, just deception through absolute mastery of the medium. The guy invented illusion magic. Of course he can beat an accusation with a magic trick nobody else could even conceive of. But before that whole mess even fully resolves, there's a detour that might be the single craziest set piece in this entire story. And it's got nothing to do with monsters at all. A commercial airplane, mid-flight, gets critically damaged and starts going down over a mountain range. Hundreds of civilians on board, no time for a controlled emergency landing, cockpit shredded, pilots unable to save it. This is the kind of disaster where a magic-based rescue squad genuinely earns its keep. And Minato doesn't wait for a mission order. He goes. He gets to the plane mid-descent and does something that should not be physically possible. Dives straight out of the broken cockpit window into open air, thousands of feet up, aiming to intercept a 230-ton falling aircraft with nothing but his own body and his own magic. And then he pulls it off. Positions himself beneath the plummeting fuselage, layers void barriers to distribute the impossible weight, uses wind magic to steer the whole thing like he's flying a kite the size of a building, and somehow, manually, muscles 230 tons of dying aircraft down onto a runway in one piece. Everyone survives. No casualties, just a mountain range that almost became a headline, and a guy who treated saving an entire plane full of strangers like it was Tuesday. If you needed one more reminder of just how far above this era's power ceiling he actually is, that's the scene. Nothing else in the story quite matches the sheer scale of manually landing a falling airplane with your bare hands, and it barely even gets acknowledged as a big deal within the story itself. That's how absurd this guy's baseline is. Which brings us to the real endgame of this part. Kuroya Kudo and the fall of the Black Rebellion. Kuroi is the head of the syndicate Leona's been hunting since that hospital bedside promise to her comatose brother, and he is not a subtle villain. He's sadistic, unhinged, the kind of crime boss who doesn't just want profit, he wants chaos. And he's built his organization's whole toolkit around one nasty specialty: anti-magic weaponry. Guns, bombs, and gear, specifically engineered to hurt mages, bypass their defenses, and level the playing field against people who'd otherwise be untouchable. After weeks of the Black Mage and Leona dismantling his operations cell by cell, Kuroi stops playing defense and goes for broke. He launches a full nationwide terror attack, bombs planted across multiple locations, anti-magic weapon crews deployed, a coordinated strike meant to prove that the Black Rebellion still has teeth even with its lower ranks getting gutted. This is the climax the whole Underworld arc's been building toward, and it pulls in basically everyone. Minato and the SMT scramble to locate and disarm the explosives before they go off, racing the clock across the city while Kuroi's crews try to hold the line with weapons specifically built to counter magic users. And fighting alongside them, undercover the entire time, is Mizuha Toshiru, Mizuha and Ruka's father, who's been embedded in this operation from the noble corruption side of things and steps in at exactly the right moment to help finish it. Between the SMT clearing the bombs and Minato going head-to-head with Kuroi directly, the terror attack gets shut down completely. Kuroi goes down. The Black Rebellion's leadership is broken. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, Leona finally gets to watch the organization that put her little brother in a hospital bed get torn apart from the inside, exactly like she swore she would. It's not a clean, bloodless victory. Cost was paid to get here, struggle was real. But it lands, and it lands hard, because everyone watching has been waiting for this payoff since that hospital scene. With the syndicate crushed, the corrupt nobles exposed, the airplane saved, and the vigilante accusation cleared, the SMT isn't just a government experiment anymore. They're the real deal, publicly proven, over and over, across every kind of crisis this world can throw at them. Recruits and lower-ranked responders start looking at this squad less like colleagues and more like monsters in the best possible sense. Untouchable, unstoppable, the team you call when everyone else has already failed. And that's exactly the moment the story decides to throw a brand new wildcard into the mix. Back at the academy, a new transfer student walks into Minato's classroom, Chloe Mumu. Chloe isn't just another noble kid with a fancy last name. Her family ran one of the biggest global conglomerates of the old world, back before the catastrophe reshaped everything, meaning she's got money, power, and a level of raw magical strength that puts her miles above the average student, maybe even above most of the current SMT roster. And here's the detail that really matters. Her family and Minato's old billionaire acquaintance are connected from before, which means Chloe isn't just powerful, she might actually know something about who, or what, Minato really is. She joins the class. She joins the SMT. And immediately the dynamic inside the squad shifts, because for the first time, there's someone on the team who isn't just impressed by Minato's power. She might be operating close enough to his level, or close enough to his secrets, to actually be a rival instead of a subordinate. Mizuha's earned her place through grinding, brutal effort. Ruka's earned hers through raw talent finally pointed in the right direction. And now Chloe walks in on day one already dangerous, already connected, already a question mark nobody on the team has an answer for yet. The SMT just got bigger. It also just got a lot more complicated. Let's rewind for a second, because there's a detail from way back near the start of this story that's about to pay off in a way most viewers won't see coming. Remember Ruka? Talented older sister, golden child, spent years effortlessly outperforming Mizuha at everything? Well, before any of the Fuka family drama, before the airplane, before any of the big set pieces you just watched, there's a quiet little scene that looks almost like filler at the time. Minato drags Ruka out shopping, not for weapons, not for gear, for rings, cheap ones, bulk ones, the kind of thing you'd buy a dozen of at a discount stall and not think twice about. Ruka, noble mage, prestigious family, mildly insulted at being asked to go bargain hunting for costume jewelry. But she goes along with it, because at this point she's already starting to trust this weird transfer student who casually one-shots things that terrify grown adults. Here's the payoff. Those rings don't stay cheap for long. Minato infuses every single one with custom wind magic, turning a stack of bulk bin jewelry into fully functional anti-monster flight equipment. Gear that lets the entire SMT squad move through the air, chase down aerial threats, close distance on fleeing enemies, all without needing some ludicrously expensive enchanted item that would take years to source normally. What looked like a throwaway errand turns out to be Minato quietly building his team's entire toolkit weeks before anyone even realizes they'll need it. It's the same instinct behind the bangles that saved everyone's lives in Osaka. This guy doesn't improvise solutions in the moment because he's desperate. He plants them ahead of time because he already knows, on some level, exactly what kind of trouble is coming. 1,500 years of experience does that to a person. You stop reacting to threats and start preloading the answers. And speaking of things quietly building under the surface, let's talk about what's actually happening inside the SMT, once the mission briefings end and the training gear comes off. Because Mizuha and Ruka are not just two skilled squad mates anymore. They're two sisters who've spent this entire arc watching the same guy save their lives, train them personally, take them into his own home, and treat them like they matter. Really matter, not useful teammate matter, for maybe the first time in either of their lives. Mizuha grew up in her sister's shadow. Ruka grew up being praised for everything except who she actually was underneath the talent. And here's this one person who sees both of them clearly, who doesn't compare them to each other, who just treats each sister like she's exactly enough on her own. You can guess where that goes. Both sisters develop real feelings, heavy, complicated, occasionally very funny feelings, especially once you throw in Minato's complete inability to read a room when it comes to compliments, which we already saw wreck their composure on that beach in Hawaii. Living under the same roof, training constantly, fighting side by side against monsters that would flatten entire city blocks, that's not exactly a recipe for keeping things simple. There's a very specific kind of tension that builds when two sisters, who spent years defined against each other, suddenly find themselves quietly falling for the exact same person, in the exact same home, and neither one's willing to be the one who says it out loud first. Minato, for his part, remains almost hilariously oblivious to the emotional minefield he's walking through daily. 1,500 years old on the inside, expert in magic theory nobody else on the planet even understands, and somehow still the last person in the room to notice two teenage girls are both quietly falling apart over him. Some things really don't scale with power level. Then there's the rooftop. We teased this one in the opening, and it's worth circling back to properly, because it's one of the more tender beats in a story that otherwise runs at full sprint most of the time. A pink-haired girl, the same one Minato personally pulled out of danger during the Academy calamity, finds him alone up on the school roof, and finally works up the nerve to say what she's clearly been sitting on for a while. A real confession. Nervous, vulnerable, the kind of moment that takes actual courage from a teenager who's watched this guy casually save her life more than once. And Minato turns her down, gently. No cruelty in it, no awkward deflection, no pretending he didn't understand what just happened. He's honest with her, in a way that respects what it cost her to say it, but the truth underneath his answer is something she could never actually know. There's a 1,500-year gap between how old he actually is and how old he looks standing in front of her. It's not about her. It's not about worth. It's a gap he can't cross no matter how much he might want to, and he handles the rejection with more care than you'd expect from someone who usually solves problems by punching them into submission. It's a small scene, but it says something important about who this character actually is underneath the power fantasy. He's not just a walking cheat code. He's someone still carrying the weight of an old life, still measuring himself against standards nobody else in this new world can see, still choosing kindness even when it costs him something to deliver it. Now, back to the bigger picture, because there's a storm building underneath all of this that the SMT hasn't fully clocked yet. Every threat we've watched Minato demolish so far, demon guards, demon bosses, chief demons, even the Syndicate's anti-magic terror campaign, sits somewhere in the middle of that monster hierarchy we laid out earlier. Dangerous by everyone else's standards. Basically homework by his. But remember the top of that ladder. Supreme demons, 5 crystals, city lockdown level threats. And above even that, a demon god. 6 crystals. The single worst case scenario this ranking system has a name for. Nobody's fought one of those yet. Not in this part of the story. But the pattern's already unmistakable if you're paying attention. Calamity events are happening more often, and the gaps between them keep shrinking. What used to be a rare citywide emergency is turning into something closer to routine, and nobody currently running the government's monster response. Not Shido, not the noble families, not even the SMT's own intelligence network, has a clean answer for why the frequency's accelerating. Minato notices. Of course he notices. He's spent 1,500 years learning to read the shape of a coming storm long before it arrives. And what he's quietly bracing for, even as his squad celebrates one hard-won victory after another, is the possibility that somewhere out there, something with 5 or 6 crystals on its chest, is waiting for the right moment to stop hiding. Which brings us to Chloe. Her arrival isn't just a fun new classmate subplot dropped in to shake up the squad's chemistry, though it does plenty of that too. Especially once Mizuha and Ruka realize there's suddenly a third, exceptionally powerful girl in the picture who doesn't seem the slightest bit intimidated by either of them. Chloe walks into that classroom with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from genuinely having the strength to back it up. And within days of joining the SMT, she's already proving she's not just riding on her family's old world money and name. She can fight. She can keep pace. She might even be able to push Minato harder than anyone else currently on the roster. But it's the connection to Minato's past that makes her the most interesting new variable in the entire cast. Her family's ties run back to the old billionaire acquaintance from before Minato's reincarnation, meaning there's a real chance Chloe isn't just powerful, she's informed. She might know fragments of who Minato really was, or at least enough to start asking questions nobody else on the squad would even think to ask. That's a different kind of threat than a demon guard or a corrupt noble family. You can outfight a monster. You can expose a corrupt noble on live television. You can't necessarily outmaneuver someone who might already be halfway to figuring out your biggest secret just by existing near you. So as this part of the story wraps up, the SMT stands at its strongest point yet. Recruits look at this squad and see something closer to a legend than a government unit. The Black Rebellion's broken. The Fuka family's disgraced. A plane full of strangers is alive because one guy decided falling out of a cockpit was an acceptable risk. The vigilante accusation's been cleared with a magic trick nobody else on the planet could even attempt. And two sisters who spent their whole lives defined against each other are now quietly, separately, hopelessly, falling for the same person, who still can't tell when he's said something that just short-circuited both their brains at once. But underneath all of that momentum, two threads are pulling tight. Somewhere out past the edge of what anyone's fought so far, the calamities keep accelerating, and the thing waiting at the top of the monster hierarchy, Demon King, Demon God, whatever's actually out there, hasn't shown itself yet. Minato knows it's coming. He just doesn't know when, and for a being who's already died once giving everything he had in a single moment, when is a question that matters more than most. And right in the middle of his own classroom, a new transfer student just sat down, who might already know more about his past than anyone else currently standing in this story. Friend, rival, or something the show hasn't decided yet. The SMT just leveled up. The threats are about to level up right along with them, and the guy at the center of it all, the strongest being who's ever existed, is about to find out that surviving the apocalypse once doesn't mean the next one's going to be any easier to see coming. Montage/highlight beats already used. The forehead flick on Fuka Jin, the airplane rescue and 230-ton landing, the rooftop confession rejection, the automated clone bangle trap in Osaka, the crystal-shattering assessment scene. Modern mages, even the best of them, are working inside a box. Pick an element, master its patterns, cast within its limits. Fire mages stay fire mages. Wind mages stay wind mages. That's just how the system works now. A shadow of what magic used to be, rebuilt from fragmented, incomplete knowledge after the catastrophe wiped out most of the old records. Nobody currently alive remembers what magic looked like before the world broke, which is exactly why nobody has a category for what Minato does. He doesn't pick an element. He doesn't need to. He can synthesize multiple attributes into a single spell, like that serpent storm he used to drop the demon boss protecting Ruka. Blending elements modern theory insists should cancel each other out instead of combining. He can cast without incantation, skipping the verbal component every other mage on the planet treats as mandatory. He can throw up non-elemental barriers, pure structural force with no attribute attached at all. He can absorb an opposing element instead of just resisting it. And then there's void magic, a category that, as far as the modern world's concerned, doesn't even exist anymore. Nobody teaches it. Nobody remembers it. Minato just quietly pulls it out when he needs a level 9 spell to erase a chief demon in one shot. Every single one of these things breaks a rule. Modern mages have spent 50 years rebuilding from scratch. And every time Minato uses one casually, in public, in front of people who've spent their whole careers mastering the correct limits, it lands like a small earthquake in how they understand their own field. That's part of why Mizuha Toshiru, Mizuha and Ruka's father, got so deeply invested in figuring out who this kid actually is. He's not just impressed by raw output, he's watching someone rewrite the rulebook in real time, and a man who's spent decades as a respected noble mage knows exactly how impossible that should be. His undercover work exposing the Fuka family wasn't just about corruption, it was also, quietly, about getting close enough to observe Minato without spooking him, testing him in ways that looked like routine noble family politics, but were really just a father trying to understand what kind of force his daughters had attached themselves to. And now, with Chloe added to the mix, that same question just got a second, much more personal investigator. Because here's the thing about Chloe that's worth sitting with a little longer. She's not fumbling around trying to piece together clues the way Mizuha did early on. She's not squinting at Minato's combat footage trying to do the math. If her family's old-world connections run as deep as they seem to, she might already have context nobody else on the SMT has access to. Fragments of history from before the catastrophe, old records, old names, Maybe even old photographs of a face that looks a little too familiar sitting in a high school uniform. That's a different kind of pressure than anything Minato's dealt with in this new life so far. Every other person who's gotten close to the truth, Mizuha, Ruka, Takigami, got there through trust, through fighting alongside him, through earning it. Chloe might just walk in already halfway there, armed with nothing but inherited knowledge and a very inconvenient last name. It puts Minato in a position he hasn't really had to navigate yet. Someone who isn't just a teammate to protect or a secret to manage, but a genuine unknown. Ally, rival, threat to his cover. The story hasn't tipped its hand, and that ambiguity is exactly what makes her introduction land as more than just new powerful character joins the roster. Meanwhile, life inside the SMT keeps moving at the pace this squad's become known for, which is to say, fast, relentless, and constantly escalating. Ryuji, the fourth original member of the team, has spent this whole stretch quietly leveling up right alongside the sisters, less flashy than Mizuha's grit-fueled climb, or Ruka's talent finally being pointed somewhere productive, but no less necessary. A squad this small can't afford weak links, and every mission against real monsters, the kind with multiple crystals and actual intelligence behind their eyes, makes that clearer by the week. And the missions aren't slowing down. If anything, the pattern Minato's been quietly tracking, calamities hitting more often, gaps between them shrinking, keeps confirming itself every time the SMT gets called out. What used to be a rare, city-shaking emergency is edging towards something closer to routine, and that shift alone is enough to keep a 1,500-year-old god of magic from ever fully relaxing, even in the middle of a beach vacation or a training montage. Because here's the uncomfortable math underneath all of it. Every monster tier the SMT has cleared so far, magic beasts, magic guardians, demons, even a chief demon, sits below the two categories that actually terrify this world's response network. Supreme demons. And, worst case, a demon god. Nobody's seen either one show up yet in this story. But if calamities really are accelerating the way the pattern suggests, Yet is doing a lot of quiet, heavy lifting. Minato's not scared of the fight. He's died once already at the absolute peak of his own power, so a second brush with something enormous isn't exactly new territory for him philosophically. What actually worries him? What you can see in the way he keeps preloading solutions before anyone else even senses a problem? The rings, the bangles, the quiet preparation running underneath every casual victory? Is the people around him. Mizuha, Ruka, Ryuji, Leona, even a wild card like Chloe. 50 years ago, he was the only one who could carry that kind of weight. Now he's built a team of people who can't yet, and he knows it. So as this arc closes out, that's the real tension sitting under all the victories. Not can Minato win. Nobody's seriously questioning that anymore. Not after a plane landing, a forehead flick, and a chief demon getting erased in one spell. The real question the story's setting up is what happens when a threat finally shows up that's big enough to force him to stop holding back completely, in front of people who are only just starting to understand what holding back even meant for him this whole time. The SMT just proved they can handle corrupt nobles, terror syndicates, and city-leveling monsters without breaking stride. Chloe just walked in carrying a piece of history nobody else on the team has access to, and somewhere out past the edge of everything we've seen so far, the gap between calamities keeps shrinking, which means whatever's waiting at the top of that hierarchy isn't just a theoretical threat anymore. It's a countdown. And nobody knows exactly how much time's left on the clock. That's where this part of the story leaves off. A squad at the top of its game, a secret about to get a lot harder to keep, and a storm building just past the horizon that even a 1,500-year-old god of magic can't fully predict.